array of panels coming up a little later today. Naughty Dog's going to drop by with the cast of The Last of Us 2. We're going to have the cast from the Uncharted games over the last 10 years to celebrate that series' 10-year anniversary, and a whole lot more. But first, wanted to talk about a game that's definitely on my radar, and that is Vane. And luckily, we've got Matt from Friend and Foe here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about the setup for Vane. I mean, I know it's kind of got this minimalist kind of look and feel.
Right.
And we are going to check out some new gameplay here shortly, but tell me a little bit about, like, what do fans need to know about this game?
Well, we kind of want people coming in cold. We want, it's a very mysterious world. The game is basically an exploration of a strange place. And if you know that, I think that's pretty much all you need to know. That's
it. Segment done.
I mean, it's sort of a it's got some standard sort of third-person exploration, platformy kind of controls to it, but it's about this this strange world that starts off as a desert, but there's hints of more stuff to it, and really you're just exploring it and uncovering it kind of layer by layer and trying to piece together what happened or who your character is or what the relationships between the different things you find in the world.
That's great, and we got that new gameplay footage running right now. This is coming to PS4.
Yep.
Gorgeous aesthetic to this one. I mean, I think it looks really, really pretty. And
excellent.
You know, how do you respond? I've heard sometimes some folks will kind of compare it a little bit to Journey or something like that. What's your reaction to that?
I mean, you can't help but be flattered, right? I mean, that's pretty much it. The Journey is a really fantastic game, and we're flattered by the comparison. I think our game is a little bit different. Obviously, you ask any creator,
sure,
and they're gonna talk about what makes their game unique. But
it seems to have a little bit of a darker feel than Journey did.
Yeah, and it's a little bit like it's very much like we want players to find their own way in this world. You know, like we want players to sort of carve their own path, and we don't really want to hold people's hands. We don't really want to tell them where to go. So, like in this big environment, we're not really showing you specifically where to go. You kind of have to find that out for yourself.
Now, the character just turned into a bird. Did I just see
that?
that?
That is worth mentioning.
That was actually correct.
Yeah.
So when the game starts, you'll actually be a bird when the game starts. This section of the game is a little bit further in, and the character can transform. There's a mysterious kind of golden substance in the world that affects that transformation. And that golden substance also starts to have effects on other things in the world, and you might see some interesting, like the world kind of looking a little glitchy or moving around or whatever. That's the effect of that substance.
Now, is it like a goo or a powder or
it's
an energy or something like that?
It's gold is the way we see it.
Okay.
It's what we call it. But it's sort of yeah, it's just a mysterious metallic substance.
Okay.
It's got this mysterious power to it.
And here we're perching on this you know, this pole or whatever this is, this bar with these other birds. How did that work?
So there's some mechanisms. There's it's sort of unclear maybe why these mechanisms might be here, but they are there and you can interact with them. As a bird, you really can't do very much in this game. Most of the gameplay is about finding ways to turn into a child and then affect change that way.
I see.
But is that gold stuff in the background that we're seeing there?
Yeah, that's
okay,
what that might
so that's
be.
how that
I see. We're gonna get a look at this gold here.
But there are some small mechanisms that if you can get enough birds with you, if you can kind of build up some numbers, you might be able to do something. Especially the section of the game that takes place before this has a lot of that type of interaction and carry it through into this cavern.
Now the landscape that we're in almost has a, like, looks like ancient ruins, maybe post-apocalyptic a little bit. Does that play into it?
With a lot of triangles too. I know there's like kind of a polygonal look to a lot of this.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have a particular aesthetic we're shooting for. You know, part of that's a concession to being a small team is that we can't do a ton of detail in things, so we're trying to pick an aesthetic that lets us work fast, but part of it's also that we just think it looks very good.
It's cool. It looks great. Yeah, so it does look like some sort of maybe an ancient civilization or something, to Meredith's point. I know you're being cagey on details here, but
yeah, I'll continue to be cagey. It certainly could be.
And we'll continue to keep prodding and pestering.
How many years have you guys been working on this game so far?
3 years so far.
Wow. Okay. Great.
Yeah, it's been a long road, and we have some distance yet to go.
Now, what was there a moment or a game or a mechanic that inspired this? Like, what was somebody doodling someday and said, this is what I want to do? Like, how did that kind of come together?
It was, I think we came across an atmosphere first. We came across sort of like a feeling in an atmosphere, and we wanted to build from that. And so it was sort of about like coming up with a look and then working backwards and sort of putting gameplay into that. And it was this sort of like this idea of the bird transforming into a child and a child transforming into a bird that kind of, I think, set all that off.
Now we're up to the orb. I noticed that was glowing before.
Yeah,
There's kind of like light cues that let you know where to progress. Because with a game that's open, you don't want a player to get lost. You want them to have some sort of arc to carry them through and know what to do next. So is light a big cue for you guys?
Yeah, we try to do what we can. We don't want to do too much. We don't want the player on a leash, but we also don't want the player to get lost. So it's like this is a game where we want people to feel free to explore, but not feel lost. So it's
delicate balance.
It is a really delicate balance. It's something that's very challenging for us. And this is usually what like we don't put this stuff in until the last minute because we want to avoid putting in those kinds of hints, and then people get lost and we put them in. So
yeah, this is a looker, all right. Now, what's it like to actually control the bird? Is it through the analog sticks? Like,
yeah, it's sort of a flight simmy, like a light flight sim.
Okay.
Type of controls, and it starts out with sort of the usually like inverted controls, but we have options to change that for people who are uncomfortable. But then a standard kind of platforming style third-person action adventure controls for the child.
Yeah, and what are the actions that the child can actually do?
Well, he can the child can shout, which doesn't really do much in this segment. And then there's a couple of context-sensitive actions.
Okay.
Like you can pull, you can push stuff, but that's pretty much it. There's not
Does
like
the bird have a calling as well? If the child
bird
yells?
can call out.
Okay.
Most of the actions have kind of similar analogs between the two forms, as much as we managed to do that.
I see.
Yeah.
This is cool.
Yeah. So there's this sort of like weird kind of. We like these like weird forms and sort of like disturbing shapes, and you have to kind of plow through those sometimes. To your point earlier about maybe this is a lost civilization, or maybe something came here before, and there's these hints to what might have happened, and you kind of unravel that as you play through the game.
Now, from like a replayability perspective, when this title's finally done, by the way, do you have a release time frame, or is it you still working away on it?
We're working on it, and we just want to finish it. We want it to be good.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's a good plan. Make it good.
Yeah.
But yeah, from a replayability perspective, are there going to be reasons for players to come back and play this game again?
I imagine that the first time you play through this game, it won't make a ton of sense.
Oh, okay.
And so that it's once you get to the end, you might want to play it again to kind of get a little bit more context.
I see. Okay.
And there might be some things that you missed the first time. Like,
okay.
Like most of the stuff you're doing in this area here is actually optional. Like you don't have to set that bird free like you just did. And so, maybe there's some of these things that you didn't manage to interact with the first time around, and seeing what kind of cumulative effect those might have had over the course of the game is something that we hope players might want to take another look at.
So is there sort of a cause and effect as you play through the game, and it kind of builds, and it sounds like there might be different things that happen?
Yeah, the whole game is kind of a cause and effect. It's sort of like it's sort of like this strange place that you're exploring, and that sort of by just you coming into it sort of starts to fall out of balance, and starts and big kind of chain reactions start to take place. And,
interesting.
And so it's not just in the sort of crucial plot actions that you do, but in other things as well.
It's almost like side quests in a way, something that outside the main story that are optional, but still add to the whole of the game.
Yeah, and to be totally honest, we're actually not really sure what to do except for have those in the game. Like in terms of collectibles, we don't really want you to collect stuff.
Yeah.
So right now you just do them, and they happen, and maybe there's a cool plot reward down the line from it. But
interesting. Now, are there any titles? This game has great mystique, and clearly you know that, and clearly you're trying to preserve that as much as possible, which I totally appreciate. Are there any titles that you personally look to for inspiration to kind of to do a good job with that layer of mystique?
One thing we always like to talk about is Another World.
I thought you were going to say that, actually.
Yeah, it's just like that it's like you're coming into this alien space, and it's up to you to start figuring out the rules, and start figuring out why things are happening, and you know, that's a big one for us.
I would like to know why, when that child moved the ball, that it almost like he built his own little city over here. It's like some walls started popping up, like doing some controlling of the architecture.
So, I mean, you notice that this sort of gold material on the child turned the bird into a child. And like it has some effects beyond that.
So it affects the environment as well.
Yeah.
Now, is that gold wearing off? Is that the idea?
Yeah. So it's you get sort of dusted in or coated in this sort of golden dust, and because we don't want the character to be yellow all the time, it kind of like ramps down as you move away from the gold pile. But
got it. So is that like a kind of a tension there? You have to kind of, or do you, you know, like in other words, if you keep going, will you eventually turn back into the bird?
If you get to a place where like the dust would come off.
I see.
So like at the beginning, you jump off of a tall place, and so in doing that, like the gold sort of like falls off, and you turn back into a bird.
Got it.
Water, for instance, if you wade too deep into water, it might come off.
Okay.
So there's a couple of ways to get rid of the gold and a couple of ways to get it back.
Got it. Yeah, so it seems to me like, you know, there's kind of two main sort of phases to playing in this game. You know, one of them is you play as the bird. You're surveying these giant environments, kind of circling around them. And we've seen desert environments, you know, before, and when you guys have given a look at the game in the past. And now we're seeing something that seems like maybe it's ancient ruins, but we don't know.
Definitely has more of an urban feel.
Yeah, and then so you're a bird, and you're sort of surveying and looking for points of interest, and then coming in as the child to sort of, as you said, affect change to the environment.
Yeah, so it's exactly that. It's like you've got this, as a bird, you have this freedom of movement, but you've got very limited agency. And as a child, you give up a lot of that freedom of movement for more agency.
Yeah.
And the game itself, like we're trying to build on top of that trade-off to an extent. It's you can read sort of, I guess there's some social metaphors in there that maybe we shouldn't get into.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But it's
sounds juicy.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the trade-off between freedom and progress to an extent, or
Now you can't die in this game, right? Because if you jump off the cliff, you immediately turn into the bird.
You won't die from falling off a cliff.
Oh, again, another cagey little answer. I like that.
My.
there is hazard in the game. It's just especially at the beginning, it's not super apparent.
Okay. Interesting. Interesting.
But so you can see that we've released this thing by sitting on it with the other birds, and so we came back as a child so we could open the cage and let the bird go.
Yeah. Now, what would be the advantage for the player in freeing these different birds that are sort of entrapped around the environment?
It's not entirely clear at this point what that might entail. It does have some impact later on in the story.
Okay. Like you were saying earlier, when all the birds had to sit on the one mechanic together to make something happen, the more birds you release, the more they are to join you.
Yeah.
And use those mechanics?
There's certainly the part of the game before this involves much larger numbers of birds, and you use those numbers to your advantage. And so the player will kind of probably continue that instinct here in the cave, but whether or not you get the same result is a different question.
Yeah, beautiful game.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it looks great.
So we've sort of landed on this thing and unleashed another pile of gold so that we can transform again. And hopefully this will lead us to that large golden seed that we sort of unlocked earlier.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens when the game does eventually come out on PS4. Very excited.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having us.
Game looks terrific. We've got a lot more coming today. We've got some great panels in store at PlayStation Experience. So please stay with us.